The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova is a lush, suspenseful, and beautifully written tale of an academic's daughter who goes in search of the hidden connections between her family and the 15th century reign of Vlad the Impaler. The novel journeys through the libraries and monasteries of Eastern Europe, and every mystery opens up a new set of questions. Hello and welcome to The Best Book Ever, the podcast where we get to know interesting people by asking them about their favorite book. I'm your host, Julie Strauss, and joining me today is Liam Jenkins, the Hampshire-born middle-grade author of the Dylan McFinn Chronicles. Liam loves to read dense philosophical works and suspenseful academic thrillers, and I was delighted that he joined me today to talk about why The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova is the best book ever. Hi, Liam. Welcome to the Best Book Ever podcast.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
Will you tell my listeners about your own writing before we get into other people's books? First of all, how did you become a writer? Let's start there.
I was in public relations for a while, writing copy and press releases, and the industry was financial services, so it was incredibly dull, incredibly boring. But I really enjoyed the craft. I really enjoyed the craft of writing, and how a press release would hang, and how an article would hang, and the points that you could get across. So it was something that really piqued my interest, and I was like, I really enjoy writing. So I've always had a vivid imagination, and I on a family holiday once, we just went. I just said I'm going to write a book, and they went, oh yeah, okay, whatever.
The place that you were visiting is what gave you the inspiration?
Yeah. We went on there's two reasons. Family holiday in Madeira, Portugal. It's a tiny little island off the coast of Portugal. If we ever are allowed to travel properly again, then I strongly recommend you go there, because it's like East meets West. You know, Africa meets the Mediterranean. So you've got these beautiful buildings, but then you've got the sort of the African feel, and I was just like, this place is really quite stunning, and it was quite magical as well because they've got their own microclimate, so the food is out of this world, and some of the fish and things that you just don't get anywhere else in the world live in this tiny little rock, and it's like the scabbard fish, which live 400 or 500 meters down, which looks like a really disgusting coloured. It looks slimy and black, and it's got massive teeth, and it lives on. Well, it doesn't live on the island, but it lives, deep in the ocean and near the island. But that's the only place you get it, and it's things like that. And it really, really sparked my imagination. I just went, I'm going to write a book. I'm just going to write a kid's book, and I did.
Is your kid's book about Madeira?
No, it's about the Pacific. Actually, it's about Fiji and the Pacific Island. These wonderful little archipelago islands and what have you that scatter. Tonga and Fiji are quite amazing, and all the mammals and fish and people. It's just a great. It's out of a storybook. So I just thought, I'm going to create a little island within the other islands. All this stuff happens, and that's where the book is based, which is in Fiji.
And it's a children's book.
It is. If you're a fan of Percy Jackson and, dare we say, Harry Potter, then it sits within that genre. So, my protagonist, Dylan McFinn, is very much a young boy about to embark on his teens, and stuff happens which he had no idea he was connected to. So that you can see the sort of the similarities there with the characters, can't you? Percy Jackson, Harry Potter. Hopefully Dylan one day will be as big as.
What's your plan? Will it be a long series, or do you plan on expanding the island, or what's your dream for this?
The dream is I'm already drafting book 3. So I'm reckoning 5 books, maybe 6, because I know the beginning, I know the end, but this bit in the middle,
yes.
I don't know how we're going to get there. So,
oh God, the middle's the worst.
The middle is the worst.
It's so hard.
It is hard.
I'm so fascinated by creative sparks, and it's really interesting to me that this holiday that you were on in a different island, in a different part of the world, sparked this story. And it's almost like rest itself creates things.
It's quite interesting because lockdown, pandemic and what have you, gave you a lot of time to think and be bored. And I looked at meditation, and I did a lot of meditation, and you look at your health and things because there's nothing else to do. We now have a 10-month-old baby again.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you, but there was nothing else to do.
A lot of pandemic babies, I think.
But there's a lot to be said for being bored. And it's hard because if you we're just distracted all the time with smartphones and Netflix specials and work and family life and paying bills and everything else in the world that's going on. You are in a constant state of distraction. Yeah. But if you can take yourself out of that and be bored, I mean, like staring at the ceiling board, picking the fluff out your belly button board, then that's when the creative spark happens. That's when the channel comes in, because it's almost like a factory setting reset on your brain, and it just goes, oh, what about that? It's incredibly important. We take it for granted, actually, because we're always told we must be creating, we must be doing, we must be on brand, we must be this, we must be that. If you weigh too heavy one side, then you lose the other side. It's what I call shadow work, isn't it? But so if you can balance that off, or even just dip into that utter boredom, then that's where the spark happens. So you're absolutely right. On holiday, I was not bored, but I was relaxed, and
yeah.
And all of a sudden, the creative flow kicks in.
I don't know. I just think creativity for the sake of it is really, really good for us.
It's important. Everyone goes, "Oh, I'm not creative," and that's not true. Everyone's creative in some way, shape, or form. You just need to give it the space to grow.
Yeah.
And whatever that may be, everyone's got some form of talent. You just need to be mindful of it and watch for it, I guess. But we're quite a creative family. We're very keen on giving that space for it. It's because it's important. It plays a big part in life.
Were you raised in a creative family?
No, not really. My parents were, but they're not. My mum is creative, but she says she isn't. And it was very much get a job, get a house, get a mortgage, keep your head down, then you die. That sort of attitude. It's like, well, there's got to be more to it than that, surely. And that's always been the struggle for me. And I think I do want more, and that's something I need to get better at, which is, being thankful for what you've got. But I'm always on the press to do more. That's hence why I kept going with the book. I just thought, I've got to do this. I've got to get it out there, even if my own. Because I think you get to a point where you're like, I have to finish it. I can't let this fall away at the wayside. And a lot of people do that. They start projects as well, and that drifts off.
And your books have an ecological angle.
They do.
Right? And was that inspired by having a baby? Did that all of a sudden become an important issue for you?
No, it's been an important issue for a while for me, because who knows what's going to happen. But I think it's, if we can all do one thing, then it's one thing more than we were doing, and it's raising that awareness. It's not. I've tried to make it not preachy at all. It's a theme which runs through it, but there's a much bigger storyline which intertwines around it. I'm not really thumping at home. It's just I'm building it into the story.
Were you a reader when you were a kid?
I was, and then puberty kicked in, and then my interest skewed onto something else, obviously. And then when that subsided a touch, then I got back into the love of reading. But yeah, I was quite an avid reader as a kid, and it was Terry. I don't know if you guys get Terry Pratchett books.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, he was a big influence, and yeah, I loved his books. Mort and Discworld, and really sparked off an interest. He was such a great storyteller.
Terry Pratchett is someone who's always intimidated me a little bit because he has a giant catalog, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And I don't know where to start. I've never read any of his work, but he's been recommended to me many, many times over the years.
They're all sort of standalone stories, but there's and they actually range. They're quite. You have stories which appeal to younger kids and then older kids. He's quite a fantastic writer. He's quite skilled. But you have the Carpet people coming back to me now. But yeah, if anyone is if fantasy and different realms and different worlds are your cup of tea, then definitely check out Terry Pratchett. Wonderful world builder and character builder as well.
What do you read these days? What type of genres do you lean toward?
I do like a self-help book. I was reading the Stoics not long ago. Tony Robbins, recently read his book. Mm-hmm. Big fan of Russell Brand. He's a big influence in my life, but he's changed a lot, and he's become much more of a, dare I say the word, guru, but that's kind of the channel that he's moved into. Very spiritual. So I listen to a lot of his. I don't have time with a baby to read.
I know. It was an unfair question. I know what it feels like to have a 10-month-old, and
but I do listen to stories and books. I listened to the Sandman, that was on Audible, and that was a fantastic book. Was it the Viktor Frankl, The Meaning of Life? I think. I don't know if you've heard of that book.
Man's Search for Meaning.
That's it. You've got it. Yeah, but I've tried to dip my toe into most stuff. That was a one of the lockdowns, and we have so many over here. I've lost count, but that was one of them. But that was if you're feeling a bit down about life, then listen to that book, because that's quite impressive. More than impressive.
It never would have occurred to me to listen to that one on audio. What's that experience like? Because I read it in a paper copy. And I remember having to set it down a lot and think.
Yeah, I was gardening at the time. I listened to the whole book in a day, because it was only about 4 or 5 hours long.
Yeah.
To listen to, but it really shunted everything into perspective. That it's not that bad. And the way that they made the best out of a bad situation. It was gallows humor, wasn't it? In the end of it. And they just adapted to that scenario, that awful scenario. For those who haven't read it, it's about he grew up in he was a young man in the Auschwitz, wasn't it? And he was in the concentration camps, and he basically survived it, and he got out, and he was a professor. And that's one of the reasons why he managed to get through, because he was considered, useful in that. But it was like when he was saying it was a left or right scenario. If you were shown left, then you died. If you were shown right, you lived, and he was shown right. Things like that. It was mad. Really good book though, but you've got to be in the right mindset. Yeah, I've got my phone here. I'll have a quick look at my Audible selection. Mind Magic Methods, a complete magical system. I'm listening to that.
What is that?
That's a book about, I suppose, the law of attraction, I guess, but it's the law of the universe, but it's under the guise of magic, and these mages and wizards and witches have known for eons how to control certain things, and I just found it quite interesting, so I'm reading that one. Oh, that was the other one I read, which was fantastic. The H.G. Wells books, which was the Island of Dr. Moreau. That's wicked. That's a great book.
I don't think I've ever read that. I think I saw the movie. Isn't that a movie with
Marlon Brando?
Marlon Brando.
He sat there fanning himself.
Yeah.
Setting
Yeah.
easily, and
But is the book's good?
looks so much better, of course, as
Of
they
course.
usually do. But he gets washed up on a shore on this suspicious-looking island, and there's all these sort of spliced hybrid creatures and characters on the island. And if you think that book was written 150 years ago in comparison to now, it's quite scary.
Do you remember how you first came across The Historian?
The Historian was a present, and somebody went to me, "You'll like this." And I went, "Okay." And they were absolutely right. I read the first couple of pages and I was like, yeah, I'm hooked onto this. I think it's the book that I've read the most, or reread the most. I've read it about 5 times. Yeah, and I've listened to it about twice or 3 times.
Which format do you prefer?
I think listening, because the audiobook is actually really, really, really good.
The first time I read it several years ago in paperback format. And then for this podcast, I listened to it and then didn't realize until I went and started researching it that there are 2 audio versions available. One is abridged and one's the entire book. And the one with the multiple narrators, that's abridged. That's a much shorter version of the book. Did you listen to that one?
I didn't know that. Let me check, see which one I've been listening to.
The one with Joanne Whalley as the daughter?
Joanne Whalley, yeah.
There is an abridged version and an unabridged version. And the Joanne Whalley one is 12 hours long, I believe, which is abridged. I don't remember the book well enough to know what was cut out. So I don't know, because it was very...
I don't know. All I know is that it's really incredibly well written. It's just very descriptive, and the pace is really great, but it's like these wonderful sort of lavish brushstrokes, isn't it? I think, and it's just really indulgent, and it just feels like, I don't know, like velvet, or it just feels like that. It just, for me, that's how it feels. That book, it just feels like a real indulgent book, and you sit there, okay, all right, spoilers, it's about vampires, but you kind of know that straight away, don't you, when you read the first couple of pages? But it's how it all, and that's okay, going back to your point that you made earlier, The Historian is an influence, because I think not necessarily my book is about vampires, it isn't, but the way that Elizabeth Kostova did that beautiful way that she's sort of slowly, all the chapters are coming into one, aren't they? So you've got these 3 or 4 characters which are going into one. Yeah, they're then slowly coming together, aren't they? And she does that really, really well, I thought. I love European history, and it talks about ancient Turkey, or Constantinople as it was, and that's the mouth where East meets West. And
God, I love what you just said, that it feels like velvet. I've never heard a book described like that before, and that is perfect. That is exactly right for this book.
Yeah, it does. It feels like, or some sort of, smoking jacket that you put on. And
I read a review of it that said, I want to read you this quote because I thought it was so perfectly said. Instead of that, it's a Dracula story, but instead of fetishizing blood, Kostova fetishizes documents, manuscripts, maps, and letters, and the places that house them, like libraries, archives, and monasteries.
That's what I love.
Yeah.
That's what I love. It's the detail to that, and the importance of that detail, because I will read something and go, well, I hate to pick holes in it, but I do it all the time. If I'm watching something, I go, well, that the continuity's off. Like you're watching something and the clock says 9:05. You go back and it's 11:30. You're like, well, what the fuck? But it puts me off. And she was, or is, impeccable, in fact, at that, and that's what I like. I mean, the whole vampire thing is a side note.
It is, and it's funny that it's always talked about as a vampire novel, and you're right. It's a side note. It's almost like a Russian dolls nesting a story within a story within a story, as she goes back and hears her father's story, who's telling his professor's story, who's telling of his adventure. And I kept thinking, each layer is so complex.
Yeah, it really is.
Did you have a hard time adjusting to the way the stories continue to nest inside each other, or were you able to pick up on that quickly?
It took a bit of adjusting, but that's what I mean. I put it down for a while because you're like, oh, it's making my head hurt a bit. but yeah, and then I picked it up, and then I really got stuck into it. But yeah, you have to adjust. But yeah, it's a real work of art.
Who do you recommend this book to when you're talking books with your friends? What type of reader do you think would like this book?
I recommend it to everybody.
Really?
I recommend it to my wife, Jen. Says you must read it because it's just a really wicked. I think it's one of the novels that slipped under, but I think it's one of the dare you say it, but one of the greats. Because pound for pound, it is a really, really beautifully written book. I think anyone who has an interest in reading should read this because I think it's for the love of the craft. Actually, that book. There's so much love in that book. You can feel it. So, I mean, I think people get put off because it's probably considered vampiric, or it's in that genre, and that's not my cup of tea. It's not part of the whole story. And in fact, when these sort of undead characters come and actors, scouts or whatever, it's just so well written. It's really eerie. It feels really dark and dusty and fusty, and I just think it's brilliant.
I think it's kind of billed as like an academic adventure. I see it lumped together with those Dan Brown. Thank you. I feel like this book is always lumped in with Dan Brown, and that doesn't feel right to me at all, because those are so much action.
Yes. It feels to me like a female version of Indiana Jones, but not necessarily with the action. That wonderful bit at the beginning when they're building, like the story building. That's how it feels to me. And then you get that wonderful sort of screenshot where you see the plane going across the screen to whatever. But that's how I see it within, like taking the train across to Turkey and Istanbul and Hungary and all these different places trying to find her dad. That's how I see it.
I think it's for people who walk into, and you have a lot more access to this where you live than I do here in the States, but people who walk into old buildings and sort of get the chills. Like, there are a lot of stories in these walls.
We got pubs over here which are 15th century. We're very lucky actually, UK, to have that. We take it all for granted, but there's buildings here which hold their own stories. But they're the places we got a pub just on the road, which is very similar sort of thing. For me, I just sit. It's not necessarily getting pissed up. It's a case of you sit there and it's taking in the atmosphere because it's steeped in it.
Have you traveled to any of the locales that are in the Historian? Or do you have any familiarity with those parts of the world?
I've been to Turkey, been to Egypt, so it's in that in my mind's eye, it's in that remit. I'm kind of piecing it together. Hungary, I've been to Austria, so I got the feel for it.
Well, you've been a lot of places. A lot of these sort of old European historical places.
Fucking Brexit, but yeah.
Yes.
Well, we had the wonderful. I consider myself a European. I've got a European passport, and a side note, Brexit is a complete ball ache. It's a waste of fucking time. Anyway, but yes, we used to go to loads of different European countries: Spain, France, south of France, Italy. Yeah, it's only when you go into sort of Turkey and Greece, because I've been there as well. It's the history. It's the history there and Rome as well. I mean, Italy, but it's the history there. You just feel it. You can just feel it.
Yeah, this is also a book. In addition to all the literary merits, it's very much a book that sparks wanderlust.
Yeah.
Did we catch up on what you're actually in the middle of right now?
Yeah, I am actually listening to Origin again, Dan Brown. That's pretty cool.
Oh, what's that one about?
That one, well, spoiler alert, ladies and gentlemen, if anybody's ever heard it, but this is about artificial intelligence, this one. And there is a Elon Musk character who finds this as he's got a timeline, and he realizes that the human race, they think it's aliens to begin with, and he says there's something else which at a certain point in the human evolution we get taken over by something, and it turns out it's artificial intelligence. And surprise, surprise, it is. We just haven't had it integrated in our bodies yet, but we can't go anywhere without them anymore, can we? So they're part of us. So that is a very, very brief snapshot of that book. But it's a Dan Brown special. It's really good. I think it's really good. I like his stuff. I do enjoy his stuff.
Will you tell my listeners where they can find you and your work?
Of course I can. Yeah. So you can find me on the socials. I'm on Facebook, Dylan McFinn Chronicles. Look me up. I'm on there. Instagram is Liam Jenkins official. Liam_Jenkins_official. That's my Twitter, Instagram handle. And I've also got my website, which is Liam Jenkins official, I think. And you can get my book on there, on any of those platforms. You can get it on Barnes & Noble, I think. Definitely get it on Amazon.
Well, I want to thank you for joining me today, and I hope you'll come back anytime you have a book you want to tell me about. This was great fun to read and great fun to talk about. Yeah,
likewise. Great fun. Really enjoyed it.
Bookworms, tell me what you think of this book. Are you a fan of the Dracula legend and the many iterations of it we've seen over the years? What do you think this book gets right or wrong? I would love to hear your thoughts. Let me know on Instagram at Best Book Ever Podcast. Remember, you can find links to all the books we discussed in the show notes or at my website, bestbookeverpodcast.com. And if you have a book you want to tell me about, click on the Be a Guest button on my website or Instagram bio so we can chat. Thank you for joining me today, and I will see you at the library.
Just see one thing through from the very beginning to the very end. See where you get. That sense of accomplishment is really quite great.